All right, I think we're live. Welcome everyone. Happy Sunday. Happy 1999. The revolution continues. It's great to be a part of this global conversation as a part of the symposium. Thanks to everyone who has had the opportunity to watch the panelists' talks like asynchronous prior to today's session. If you didn't get an opportunity, they are still there. If you'd like to go back to watch them later, if you didn't get an opportunity to watch the brilliant talks across our panelists, I really encourage you to do so. They were really fantastic. My name is Monroe, and I am the Vice Provost for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice at Tufts University, and also Faculty of Practice in our Tisch School of Civic Engagement and Civic Life. And so it's such a great opportunity to be back a part of this conversation today. Prince is one of my role models in the world for many different reasons, and also someone that I've had a lot of critique about in terms of things over time of his career. And so I'm so delighted to be a part of the conversation today. I'm going to turn it over to our incredible panelists to introduce themselves very briefly. Then we'll get into questions and some of the questions that maybe all of you have as well that we'll receive during the Q&A time. So I'm going to first start just in the order I see people on my screen. Kamilah, I think I see you first. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am honored to be here, as always. Not much to say to introduce myself. I'm Black and I love Prince. Hey,
that's a great way to start today. Casci, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Casci. I am from Paisley, Scotland, and I am a PhD researcher looking at Prince fashion and fandom, and I have been a fan of his royal badness since I was a very little girl, thanks to my mum and dad's very eclectic music taste as well. And as always, a huge pleasure to be here, and with such incredible panelists as well. Everybody's papers were fabulous.
Yes, absolutely agree. Adam, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Adam Rudegeair, and I'm a keyboardist, band leader, and broadcaster here in Melbourne, Australia. I've been a Prince fan since Diamonds and Pearls era, and very quickly worked my way backwards. And it's great fun to be here. This is my second year presenting at the Symposium, and and again, I'd like to reiterate, I loved everybody else's talks that I've seen so far. Just so many wonderful perspectives. So well done, everyone.
Thank you. And Edgar, please.
Hi, I'm Edgar Kruize, a music and entertainment industry journalist from the Netherlands. Been a Prince fan since '85, so that makes me old. And this is my I don't know, third or fourth symposium. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks everyone. And let me also just start by saying a big kudos to D'Angela for all of her great leadership vision. She is just an incredible thought leader and scholar, and also Prince enthusiast. So thank you, D'Angela, for all of your great work. So what I want to start with is a question that I was ruminating with as I was watching all of your talks today, this morning and afternoon. And one of the things that maybe it was you, Adam, who said Prince is the special sauce. I can't remember who it was or who said it, right? And so
Tommy Dawkins said that.
Okay, got it.
On my Paisley Park tour in 2019.
Got it. So I want to talk about that special sauce, right? Because I think it's very interesting in terms of the ways in which that all of you, you reflected on his journey over time, or the disruptions, or how he changed, the industry, or how the industry had to change to welcome him. And so the why, in terms of why are we, that piece around why are we here today, right? Why are we still talking about Prince over the decades and the influences he's had in fashion and race dynamics and how the sound of music over time, right? His legacy of the music over time and his changes over time. And so talk to me about that special sauce from whatever perspective you want to come into the conversation. Is it his influences, how it changed over time, whether it died over time and revitalized itself or whatever it is. And so that special sauce, talk to me about that. And whomever wants to go first, yeah. Or I can call on people.
All right, maybe I'll jump in. I think, and this is just off the top of my head, I think it's that he never stayed in the same place. And as I said in my presentation, he established this thing, the Minneapolis sound, which I classify as Prince's Minneapolis sound, because there are other Minneapolis sounds. There's the Replacements, and there's Husker Du, and there's all that. So he had his own signature thing, but then by the time the world cottoned onto it, he was off in other directions, and he never went back fully, which was to his commercial detriment, but not his artistic detriment. And I think what we love about him is that he was just so creative that he just kept propelling himself in new directions right up until the end. There's sounds that we hadn't even heard from him before on Hit and Run Phase 1 and 2, to continue to innovate. So I think that there's just so much in there for us to enjoy, if we're willing to be open-minded enough to accept all those different musical styles that he explored, while so many other artists, maybe more commercially driven artists in the pop industry, was just trying to replicate that sound or incorporate it into popular music, for the rest of the 80s. So that's my musical perspective on it.
Thank you. Adam has spoken. All right. So I would love to hear from someone else. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to continue on what Adam just said. That's indeed what I like most about Prince. He was always moving ahead, and that's the thing that I like to do in life as well. It's a bit frustrating that he went so far ahead. It's hard to catch up. But I liked, for instance, from watching the presentation from Casci, is that you see him evolve also with the style of clothes. He always remains Prince, but he's always ahead. And back in the 1980s, it was very difficult to catch up with him because things were moving so fast, and we didn't have the internet yet. So in the years that followed, he continued and he kept pulling things from his past and incorporated it in his future, and that's what I think was his special sauce. That he always evolved, always moved ahead, and that's what I like about him.
Right. Well, but what I also heard was a little bit of a mourning too from you, Edgar, at some point in terms of his always moving ahead. But I want to come back to that. Maybe my interpretation of your inflection or your deflection when you spoke about some of his evolution over time. I think Kamilah, you were going to speak next. I saw you come off mute.
I did. I agree with Adam and Edgar. Particularly for me, it's on the always evolving. My intro, I said I'm Black and I love Prince, and that's the special sauce for me. The ways in which Prince, through his constant evolution, but staying grounded in the Black culture that really fertilized and fortified him. And for me, being a Black Midwester from Chicago, Chi-Town, being from Chicago, the Black Midwest, I identified so much in the way Prince represented the multidimensionality of Blackness. And I love Zaire's presentation yesterday about this Black futurist space of not being confined, not being restricted. And what C. Lee talked about was, I'm going to define who I am and make you understand it. Also, you're going to understand who I am. I'm not going to have you limit me. I might play your game to get where I need to get because I understand it's a game that I'm playing. Yet and still, I'm not going to be limited by the rules of your game. And so for me, that's that special sauce that, unapologetic Blackness in Prince, that unquantifiable Blackness in him that I heard in his music. C. Lee talked about the indices of Blackness throughout his music, and that's on 1999 to me. And he does it linguistically, not just in the music, but in the music where, like on Irresistible Bitch, where he's like, all my partners ask me why I take so much abuse. Black men back in the day referred to their crew as partners. Or on Horny Toad, I'm the kind of brother that, the more you scream, the nastier I get. Right. older brother, even DMSR, where he says Negroes say, that's intra-group communication. In 1980, 81, no one outside of the group that was the other N-word is going to use the term Negro. So he's always representing Blackness without limit and without definition. And so that's, for me, the special sauce. And he was just fine. Like I always put.
Well, then, to the end of the day, he was just fine. But I think what's also interesting about that, Kamilah, is that a lot of people don't know how much he contributed to Black causes, like, behind the scenes. It's supported so many different communities, Black communities, like not only in Minneapolis, but other larger Black movements as well. And so I'm going to turn to our last friend here, Casci. Please go ahead.
Yes. So Prince's special sauce, I completely agree with everybody's sentiments. Coming from like a kind of clothing perspective, what I really love about Prince is that he was like a student and he soaked up all these different influences, and you can see that in every kind of period of his life, and kind of re-collaborated them and collaborated with other creatives to make a look distinctly his own. And I think the period that we're speaking about just now is like just prior to Purple Rain. Like Purple Rain to me is his most kind of like conservative look, because it had been done a couple of years prior, but it hadn't been done by like a Black man from Minneapolis. That's what was subversive about it. But I get really excited when Prince is Prince, like Prince performing Hot Thing, and like his sensuality, and that that excites me. But yeah, like his special sauce, like I do think it, like his special sauce cannot be a special sauce without all these incredible collaborators, whether it's like the musicians, the designers, the like the techs at the gigs, like his PA, the people, all these people. And I think like he was a really great like being able to find people's talent or something that they maybe hadn't seen in themselves, and then just kind of like like turning it up to 100, and him like cherry picking elements of it. But yeah, like I think as well, like from like a kind of clothing perspective as well, it's very rare for somebody, a performer, to have such a kind of level of control and agency in what he wears. And whilst he obviously wasn't making the garments, he was still, like very much like, like this scene needs to be here. Like you can tell when somebody has that passion in clothing and they know how, like, I think his body is incredibly important as well. Could go off on another avenue, but Prince's body, like his body is a unique body. It's the body for a tailor, that way. Like Prince, it wouldn't be easy for him to walk and buy stuff off rack, although he did. But yeah, I'm going down another realm. But yeah, that special sauce of being able to kind of bring ideas together and really kind of. I just saw Zahir's comment as well. Like Von Terry, he's an incredible person who still works as a tailor today in New York, and he like always spoke about how like Prince was a learner. Him and Louis came in from Earth, Wind and Fire. There's no he stole them from Earth, Wind and Fire, because when you think about what Earth, Wind and Fire were doing in the late 70s. It was completely disruptive, and that way, like it's so important to celebrate these people just as much so as like the text and all that type of stuff. But
yeah. So we've talked about the special sauce, and and this has come up to, maybe this is what I was getting at with you a little bit, Edgar, earlier. But I think in all of your talks, in some ways, whether you directly like went there or you played with it on the edges, right, around contradictions, right? And so and so whether it's Kamilah, I'm going to just be real bold and say, yes, Prince was down with Black people, but what about the woman he chose? Like it's his partners, right? So and then also the disruption around fashion, right? So Casci, very much disruptive in terms of the display of reimagining masculinity and being disruptive and a futurist in that way, but at the same time grappled with some other real classical masculinity things. I was just looking at a beautiful image of him the other day with a basketball on the top of his finger, and it let's like talk about that. So fine, Kamilah, that was a moment. It was a moment, right? But so, and then you talked about the change of his music over time, and like, you know, even though it hit his like success. And so, and Edgar, you've talked about this too in terms of the evolution of 1999 is dead. And so I'm curious about the contradictions, right? And how you all navigate that in your thinking about him, you know, as we uplift him, but also see those that I think the conflict in moments in his own legacy and his own journey. So as an artist, as a person, as a human being, maybe even engaged in society in conflict as well. So I'll stop there and just open it up the floor, but maybe we can think about who went first last time.
Well, the conflict is indeed what I like about Prince. Yeah. He created conflict to move forward. That's what I think. You know, the moment he split from the revolution, that was a conflict. But from that conflict came the next phase. The way his relationships, same thing. There was always conflict, and there was always the conflict was the creative evolution. Without the conflict, he wouldn't half be as interesting as he is. Because of that, he had his own vision, and his vision was, as far as we all know, leading, and whoever got in the way had to move out of the way because he wanted to move forward, and that's where most of his passion comes from, and possibly the reason why we all love him so much is that he did his own thing, regardless of what. He just moved ahead. And conflict is part of that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Kamilah, it looks like you want to chime in.
I'm trying to remember the order. I didn't want to be a disruptor.
So we'll go Kamilah, Casci, and then Adam. That's
okay. So I love your question because I think I remember touching on this back when I did the Sisters in the Temple presentation on Prince. Because I think with Prince and the women he chose as mates, the ones who he publicized as opposed to the ones we didn't see, because there was a lot of that we don't know. I mean, some people act as if they were the inspiration for everything Prince ever did. Someone who will remain nameless.
Yes.
But you know, there's so many women that it's really hard to tell, and some women get more attention than others. What I will say, you know, about Prince and colorism, and I appreciate Jill's candor. I just appreciate Jill, period, and D'Angela for bringing Jill to the conversation. Yeah. Too often the same people are talking about Prince who didn't have as full an experience with him. And so I think speaking of conflict, to be Black in America is to live in conflict, and to live in external conflict and also internal conflict. And I think, you know, for Prince, he definitely that colorism is there, and it evolved. You know, Prince was a light-skinned Black man, born light-skinned Black. People often, when we talk about colorism, it's from the perspective of darker-skinned Black people, but not the other end of the spectrum where light-skinned people get judged and have their own set of issues. Also, being in the middle, I used to see it from both ends. And even in my own family, people who were very Black nationalistic and pro-Black, but still the colorism comments. You would hear about hair texture, skin color, facial features. And so there's this ongoing battle within the Black body that is part of this whole space. I don't know what just happened. Oh,
it's just a two of us.
Something went crazy on the screen. There we go. But I can't be big, please. The internal conflict. But but in that though, I think we see that in Prince. But Prince's choice of mate, and I was doing research on this, is not unlike the majority of people in the world who tend to pick partners based on either their own phenotype or the phenotype of the gender of parent that they're attracted to. And a lot of Prince's women look like him and his mother. So that's also that I think that's left out of the conversation. Sure. But he also did exploit and play two hegemonic beauty ideas. He exploited himself, as I said in the presentation. On any given day, he was a mix of things, but also there was a 1981 Black Stars interview where they asked him about his name, and he doesn't use his last name. And he said, I don't use it because it's a slave name. That was 1981. So Prince was very aware of racism. going to the Way and the Phyllis Wheatley Center, places like that. But again, it's that conflict. It's the inner struggle, the duality of being Black and navigating, having to learn to love that as an act of resistance in a world that tells you that you shouldn't love yourself. So there's a lot going on in that. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, I know you did. Thank you. Brilliantly so. Casci, please.
Yeah, like I think that conflict and the kind of like duality of Prince is what, you know, like we've all of us here have spent thousands of hours poring over the tiny minutiae of his career. And I think, you know, like we can't expect somebody to be perfect. We're all human, we're all flawed. You know, like there's a part of me that really struggles with Prince in terms of his treatment of women and, you know, like treatment of staff and things like that. And, you know, like it does jar and it does kind of, but I think it's good to have that because I think it's, you know, like as we're growing and we're learning more about Prince now that he's no longer here, we're seeing aspects of his character that, you know, like we weren't necessarily privy to. And he's also not here to, you know, like to share these things. I think, like I say, like, it's like, what's the phrase, you know, like about your idols, like you should, you know, like, you know the phrase.
Basically humanizing your idols. Yes, I know.
Yeah, like I think, you know, like he was flawed. He was a human. He had so many things going on in his life personally that obviously impacted him in a series of ways. But I think like what I take from it is that, you know, like this idea of living like a wholly artistic life. And Prince like kind of carving out this liminal space that he lived in, and you know, like he projected his own idea of how he wanted to live his life, from the heels to, you know, like working in a studio 24/7. You know, like to me that's, you know, like I find that, you know, like that's what I cling on to when there's aspects of his character that you know, like are perhaps not as savory as and also as well, you know, like the kind of yo-yoing as well about queerness and stuff in the early 2000s, like it's difficult to acknowledge that and understand. But again, like Prince was a human and he was growing, and, you know, like the growth, like we all have, you know, but yeah, like that kind of duality is just really, really fascinating because it's a study of a human, isn't it? It's like,
it is, totally. Well, I mean, I think we live our entire adult lives trying to figure out our childhoods, right? So whatever, like no matter who you are, how famous you are, how much money you have, like whether it's through your art, like how you treat people through relationships, whatever it might be, you know, we're all trying to figure things out. And some of us do it in the spotlight of others, right? And so, and that's what makes our lives like, you know, much more dynamic and real. Adam, please go ahead. Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts.
Casci, I loved some of those things that you just said about the whole, you know, the artistic life and trying to totally commit to that. I mean, obviously he had fun on the side, but I think that other stuff that he was up to really fueled his art. And yeah, he was a hugely contradictory character. We can't get behind so many of his behaviors. You know, I wouldn't personally bulldoze my ex-wife's house and things like that. You know, there's he had some dramatic moments, but one thing that I can be really thankful for is his ability to take his music very seriously, but inject it with so much humor, because he's like the funniest pop star there is. Like nobody else had songs that were so funny and played up goofy personas and had skits in his videos, you know, to the extent that he did. And I think that aspect of his personality is reflected in the playfulness of his music. So even if it's not a comedy song like My Medallion or something like that, there's so much playfulness and funny little lines and quips and jokes that he gets in there, and even musical jokes and little funny references to other things, like what do you hear, little Yankee Doodle Dandy and things like that, just little kitschy musical references, particularly around that era of 1999 and the Time albums and things like that. So that's one aspect where the contradictory nature of his personality enabled him to have this extremely serious artistic streak, but also have an immense amount of fun with it. So that's my favorite aspect of his contradictory nature.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Thank you all for those comments. And so I think we have about 5 minutes left or so, and I want to ask one last question so we can just be mindful of time. And it's about the future, right? And so we talked about Prince.
Track one on Batman.
Yeah, that's right. Oh gosh, right. And so it's like the Afrofuturism, right? So yeah, so track one on Batman, right? And so what about that in terms of his ongoing influence in the industry? Whether that's fashion, whether that is understanding, the impact, like what is Black representation in music, whether that's the style of music and influences, or even how we continue to talk about him in contemporary spaces. And so just your thoughts in terms of the future going forward as we close out. And so I'll start with Casci and then Kamilah and then then Adam and then Edgar.
I kind of got lost in that there. So Prince in the future. Yeah, I was away.
Ongoing impact,
your
thoughts about his ongoing impacts, right?
Yeah, I think Prince had a continued. Oh, sorry. I think I'm maybe lagging a bit behind. Sorry, Monroe.
No, go ahead.
I think from a fashion point of view, his influence was kind of omnipresent. But I think it became less about, particular looks, and it became about that, that Prince-ness, which is what I'm kind of struggling with in my PhD just now, because how do you distill Prince-ness? What is Prince-ness? Can other people put Prince-ness on themselves? This, but that idea, when you hear about people like Frank Ocean listening to Dirty Mind and seeing Prince, in his bikini briefs and him feeling that freedom to present as he wants, to me, that's where Prince's influence kind of is continuing. And, I showed students a couple of weeks ago the Get Off MTV VMAs performance, and the students were 17, 18, and they were still quite in shock about the fact that, this positioning of, the burlesque of it all and the strategic reveal of Prince's buttocks and stuff. And, you still don't to this day see mainstream artists, male artists do that.
Right.
I've went big again. I hope I'm. It's really scary with that.
Well, I think the Janet Jackson debacle has made it harder to do things like that as well. But
but women are more nowadays.
Debacle, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah. But women are more inclined, not more inclined, but women. We see women in various stages of undress, and another thing as well that I like to highlight about Prince and his fashion is the shifting of male erogenous zones in his clothing as well, because Prince loved certain parts of his body, and particularly through different elements of his career, he really formulates different things to show off, his buttocks, or the that kind of curve in between yours. Men's hips, Prince was Prince. I'm getting excited now, but to me that's still disruptive. That way, to me that is still disruptive for a male performer to, to thrust his hips in your face and to adorn his hips. But I'm going to stop now because it'll get.
It's saucy up in here. All right, Kamilah, please. But I know we're almost at time. Do we have any
the 30-second version? For me, the future, along with what Casci said, but for me, the future, going to what Zaire said yesterday, is making sure that we're not erasing Blackness from Prince's narrative. I think it's very important. There's a lot of whitewashing. There was a viral or a comment someone posted, I think it was on Prince.org, saying that they were tired of people trying to blackwash Prince, and blackwashing. We're fact checking, So I think it's to combat a lot of the depredation of Prince's legacy by outside entities, and reminding people who he was to us and who we were to him is important to me. So that's my future work. And I'm among so many great people here who are doing that. So again, it's just an honor to be here. And to D'Angela to provide a platform to do this, because even though it might be smaller than the estate or some other people who have their own agenda. This is a great place for people who want to think about Prince. And as Zaire said, about Prince as a thinker and his ideas. And so that's what I want to keep pushing forward in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was going to take over the screen when I did what I just did. That is life. Thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. I can't believe that the 30 minutes went by super fast. But I did want to talk about the next part of our day. It's going to be a really fantastic one. And I'm gonna make sure, yes, I've never done this on one screen before. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I usually have a 2-screen setup. So the doors are going to open today at 1 o'clock at 370J, room 202. And that's basically where we were yesterday. And I'll do the welcome at 1:30 p.m. And then we have a do not miss presentation by Dan Charnas, the author of Diller Time and also an NYU professor at the Clive Davis Recorded Music Institute. And the title of his presentation is Human Time, Machine Time, Prince and the LM1. He'll be talking about the drum machine. And then at 3:15, we'll have a 15-minute break between that. And we're going to go into a 1999 album roundtable. This is a do not miss roundtable with Anil Dash moderating and panelists Jason King, Mark Anthony Neal, Joan Morgan, and unfortunately, Jason Orr will not be with us because Delta canceled his flight and we couldn't find another flight to get him here in time. So, but it's still going to be fire with these incredible scholars. These are the top of the top in terms of scholars. The conversation I know is already going to be on fire many, many, many times. And then the final panel of the entire symposium. And I told you guys on day one that the weekend was going to fly by. The 3 days were going to fly by. The 30 minutes just flew by. We're going to end with the 1999 Super Deluxe Roundtable with my co-host on What Did Prince Do This Week, but also the longest running Prince podcast that I'm aware of alongside Peach and Black is Michael Dean, and he will be moderating the 1999 Super Deluxe Roundtable with Troy Gua, who has never spoken at one of the symposia. So I'm super excited to have Troy in the house. And we'll also have Tanya Pendleton, and then we'll have Casey Rain of The Violet Reality. So I want to thank, and I want to just thank all of you who are on the screen for putting up with all the tech issues that we had, and for my crazy emails, and for showing up as always, and the time that you put into crafting your presentations. It really means a lot. And also to you, Monroe, for taking time out of your life at such a critical time to be here with us. I really do appreciate it. So for those of you who are going to stick with us online, the live stream will still be on the home page. Right now, I have 2 live streams, this live stream, but I'm about to remove that one, and it'll go back to the live stream that we had yesterday. So I hope that the virtual audience enjoyed this. You were able to interact a little bit more than you have with the live stream. This is the reason why we call this virtual as opposed to a live stream, because the live stream is literally a live stream. So, but this is virtual so that you can have some interactive engagement. And I hope that you enjoyed being able to interact a little bit more than you have in the past couple of days. So now we're gonna transition back to 370J 202 and go back to our in-person and virtual lives, in our live stream, and then we'll get started at 1:30 p.m. And I'll stop talking because I feel like I'm like, blah, 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 blah. So thank you so much.
Bye,
You guys later.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody, take care. Thank you, Monroe.
Thank you.
Bringing your smile, Monroe. You have a beautiful smile. Thank you.
Don't you worry. You know I'm going to be in touch, so I'm writing you right now. Okay, I hope you're LinkedIn.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.